Hi everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Mary Claire Haver, and I am the creator and founder of the Galveston Diet. I'm also a board certified OB-GYN. I am a wife and a mom of two girls, 20 and 17. And I am here today to talk to you about sugar and top 6 reasons to eliminate added sugars in menopause, specifically health reasons why to limit those to a certain amount. So, I want to be clear that when I talk about added sugars, I am talking about the sugars that are added to food, either through the preparation process or the actual processing of the food. I am not talking about naturally occurring sugars found in fruit or vegetables or even some dairy. If God put it there, that is not what I'm referring to when we talk about added sugars. I'm talking about sugars, whether it be table sugar, whether it be honey, whether it be any natural sweeteners that people are, adding to foods, thinking that they might be healthier than table sugar. I'm not talking about today stevia, and I'm not talking about artificial sugars. I'm talking about when through cooking or really through the processing of food that sugars are added to make them more addictive and palatable. So so many of you have reached out to me about a sugar addiction, and I get it. So many of us were raised, as children, we show love through sugar. We show, it is a soothing mechanism. We turn to things that like cookies or ice cream or whatever when we're feeling down or bad to try to cheer ourselves up. There is a very strong addictive correlation between sugar and they actually looked at, it was an animal study, but they looked at cocaine versus sugar, and they had this, whichever animals, I think they were rats or mice in a cage, and they had sugar in one bowl and cocaine in the other, and the animals routinely went to the sugar and avoided the cocaine. That is how addictive it is. They've done some human studies where humans will forego a monetary reward in order to get their sugar, like something significant that might even change their life or pay their bills. They would rather have the cookie than have their bills paid. And I think those of you who watch like The Biggest Loser and that kind of thing, I've seen that phenomena happen on that show. So here's where we've had so much success in the Galveston Diet. In the Galveston Diet, we teach, we educate, we give you the background, we give you the science, we give you the studies. It's not enough for me as a physician to say, because I said so. Trust me. That's only going to work for a few minutes, a day or two, whatever. But if someone takes the time to educate you on the background, on the why, on the what this actually does to your body in the long run, you're way more likely to make the better choice when you're in a difficult situation and faced with, do I make this choice that is inflammatory, pro-inflammatory, or do I look for something that is less inflammatory or even anti-inflammatory? So one of the most pro-inflammatory food substances that we can put in our body is added sugars in the form of table sugar or sugars that are added in the food processing. Since the industrialization, since we all have allowed our lives to get so busy, and we've relied on convenience foods as a crutch to help us be able to take junior to 9,000 practices and tutors and all these things. Plus we're rushing to our jobs. We're trying to take care of our parents, all the things. And so, and when we're feeling down or sad, we turn to sugar. And when we're celebrating, we turn to sugar. And, it is the why that is going to keep you going. So I'm here today to give you some scientific background specifically for sugar, especially high fructose corn syrup. That's a bad boy on his own, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. High fructose corn syrup, that is added to many, many, many of the sodas and drinks and soft drinks here in the United States that are sugar sweetened beverages. It's also added to some coffee drinks, commercially processed coffee drinks. It's added to a lot of teas, the Gatorades, a lot of those things have high fructose corn syrup as the sweetening agent, and that is actually a double threat. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So let's start breaking down the science for you. So I'm not trying to shame you because you have a cookie or a piece of cake to celebrate your birthday. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the hidden sugars that you may not be aware of that are in everyday foods. And here's the first thing I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to track what you eat. I'm going to ask you to get out a notebook or get an app on your phone, MyFitnessPal, Carb Manager. There's a million out there, and most of them are free now. And start tracking the added sugars in your diet. The American Heart Association recommends that a woman have no more than 25 grams of added sugar per day in her diet. I'm not talking about fruit, whole fruit. I'm not talking about vegetables. I'm not talking about dairy. I am talking about added sugar that was not there when God made it, and we added it in cooking or in the food processing, in the food, the way we process foods, processes and packaging. So 25 grams a day. That is about, I want to make sure I get this right. So the average American, has 22 teaspoons of sugar a day, and we should have about 6. So we're eating 3.5 to 4 times as much. That's average. So half of Americans are eating more than that in added sugars per day, and the other half are somewhere less than that. Okay, but very few Americans, without being conscientious and trying, are actually getting less than what they consider to be a good amount. Here's the other thing to remember. There is no dietary requirement or benefit to your body, it's only harmful, okay, that comes from added sugars. Let me say this again. There is zero added benefit to your body to have any added sugars. Now, they are hard to avoid, okay? They're hard to avoid. Karen, I'll get there. Okay. So I'm not even we're going to go into, 6 medical reasons to really focus on what added sugars you're putting in your body and where you didn't realize you were getting them, and really to try to get to that less than 25. Why? I'm not going to even talk about weight. That should be a no-brainer. Everyone knows. Okay. So besides the excessive weight gain, we know that is associated with excessive added sugar intake. There are some menopause, midlife specific female issues that you can definitely make better by limiting these sugars. So the first one is sleep. How many of you out there are struggling with your sleep? Let me get some hearts. Are you having insomnia? Is it tough for you to go to bed? Are you waking up in the middle of the night? Are you having to get up to pee? And then you can't go back to bed? So according to data from the National Institute of Health, sleep disorders are as high as 47% in perimenopause, so almost half of us, and that tops out at 60% of us in menopause are having sleep disorders. So I know more than half of you are having it. I know it. So they did some observational studies, and they looked specifically at groups of women, how they slept, and how much added sugar they had in their diet. And so for women who had the biggest risk of insomnia there, and I'm reading my notes here, so forgive me. And one caveat, if you go to www.galvestondiet.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, this is all in a blog. I have all of this written out, okay, with some of the references like in the text. So if you want that, go check out the blog. So for these women, white and brown sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and molasses were the primary source of added sugars. In females, however, that consumed more fruits and vegetables, the chance of developing insomnia was smaller. So it's hypothesized that the women, who have more added sugars in their diet have, and guess what, when we eat added sugar, we have an insulin spike. The insulin spike is meant to drive our sugars into cells, okay? And then the blood sugar crashes. When that blood sugar crashes, you wake up, okay? You're uncomfortable. You're sweating. Your hot flashes are worse, and that's number 2. So the number 1 reason to try to get those added sugars, and you have to track in order to know what those are. You got to read those labels, because now the FDA requires added sugars to be put on labels. Yay us. So number 2, reduction of hot flashes. Who's suffering from hot flashes, okay? The higher frequency of hot flashes in menopausal women is associated with elevated blood sugar and insulin resistance. We know that refined foods, I've got my notes here, I don't want to lie to you guys, because there's statistics I'm throwing out. So a recent study presented at the North American Menopause Society, they had some women who reported 1 to 5 hot flashes a week. So in the women who reported at least 1 hot flash a week versus who had none, The women who had the hot flashes had a 33% higher glucose levels than the women who had no hot flashes. So, in comparison, women who reported hot flashes 1 to 5 days a week were also found to have a 2-fold higher incidence of insulin resistance. So, okay, so that's 1, we can sleep better, and 2, we can reduce the risk of hot flashes. Number 3, we can decrease depression and anxiety. How about that? The idea that a regular balanced diet will help you boost your mood is a well-established fact. Okay, I don't have to tell you any statistics from that. But a diet continuously composed of refined foods, and someone asked earlier, so we have added sugars. Added sugars are, brown sugar, white sugar, honey, whatever, added to foods. Either we add them through preparation or the two biggest sources of added sugar in the American diet are sugar-laden sodas and beverages and breakfast cereal. Granola bars, yogurt. Yeah, flip those labels over, ladies. Make sure you know what you're eating. Okay, so depression. So here's when your blood sugars are elevated from eating all of these sugars. There seems to be a dysregulation of the neurotransmitters. So remember, our brain, our mood, all of this is through nerves, neurons all in our brain and our spinal cord, but here's where mood is up here. The nerves don't touch. They have a space between end-to-end nerves, and there are neurotransmitters, little chemicals that go back and forth, that send signals back and forth to the nerves. That's where the antidepressant medications work, is changing the percentages of those neurotransmitters. You can dysregulate them. Basically, they become non-functional. They don't work very well. They fire when they're not supposed to from having high blood sugars, from eating too much sugar. And so it's constantly on, and it signals an inflammatory process in the brain. So needless to say, it's just not good for your mental health. If you suffer from depression and you are not trying to keep track of your added sugars, this is definitely something you can do. So for those of you who are joining us, see a lot more eyeballs on. My name is Dr. Mary Claire Haver. I'm the creator and founder of the Galveston Diet. I'm a board certified OB-GYN. I'm on break today from actually my part-time hospital job, but I am here. My passion in life is to stop shaming women in menopause about their weight gain and their belly fat, that they're just lazy and they're not trying hard enough, and to try to help women, share education, evidence-based, education about what is happening to our bodies, why we tend to gain fat in the midsection, why our health seems to take a turn for the worse, why our mood changes, why we're not sleeping, why we're having brain fog. And a lot, it has to do with aging, hormone changes, and inflammation. That is what the Galveston Diet is all about. And it's utilizing nutrition first to fight those changes, to hack those hormones to work for you, so that maybe you don't need medication. Just saying. Okay, so depression, number 4, this one's a little vain, but I'm going to go there. It is decrease the skin aging process. Okay? Wrinkles are natural. Wrinkles are a normal, natural sign of aging. None of us are getting out of here, if we live long enough without a wrinkle. Sorry, not going to happen. They're beautiful. They say who you are. It's a part of your life process, okay? Do I love mine? Some days not so much. But what you eat and how much sugar is in your diet can control the speed at which they form and the depth of them. So poor food choices, again, I have my notes, can intensify wrinkles and speed up the aging process in the skin. It has to do with a complicated chemical reaction in the body called advanced end products of glycation, or AGEs. It's just a long name for a protein-sugar reaction. So the more sugar you have, the more that it reacts negatively with this protein and becomes inflammatory molecule. And so basically these proteins that are formed, these AGE end products, stretch the skin, and you lose some of the youthful collagen, you lose some of the things that make our skin look young. So another reason, vanity, is what it is. So to decrease the skin aging process. Okay, number 5, decrease the risk of disease. Some of these should be no-brainers. We know type 2 diabetes, you can control a lot of it with nutrition, but the right nutrition, okay? Lowering your added sugar intake. Very different than the fruit that is naturally, the sugar that is naturally occurring in fruit, in fructose. Heart disease, guys, study after study after study, heart disease is the #1 cause of death globally. We get so freaked out about cancer. We get so worried about all these things. I think because we think that heart disease is inevitable. You guys, you don't have to die of a heart attack. So much of what causes heart disease is modifiable, and a lot of it through basic nutrition, and that's what I'm here to do. Fatty liver. Now, here's where I'm going to talk about high fructose corn syrup. Forever, we thought fatty liver was due to fat. Fat in the diet goes in the liver, becomes fatty liver. Actually, here's the deal. Remember that high fructose corn syrup I was talking about in the sodas? Okay. God, at my old job at the other hospital, I would get on the elevator in the morning and ride up to clinic with lots of lovely ladies that I worked at. And I was usually the only one without a giant soda, like one of those, from the gas station or from wherever they pulled over to get their morning caffeine, which for them was in the form of a soda. Now, I never asked if it was sugar-free or not or whatever, but a lot of it was the real thing, or they get sweet tea or whatever to have for their, drink throughout the day. And when I started learning about high fructose corn syrup and what it does to your body, I was thinking, my God, this is like 5-6 times the amount of added sugar they should have in their diet just right here at breakfast. This is with their breakfast. So what happens? So high fructose corn syrup is fructose. Glucose is broken down in cells. It's used in cells for energy. Think back to biology and the Krebs cycle. Those of you who had to take it, glucose is broken down in cells as a form of energy. Fructose is not broken down in our cells. Fructose is broken down in the liver, okay? And then it is stored as glycogen for the times when your body runs out of glucose, and then it goes to the liver, grabs the glycogen, and keeps going. Once the glycogen is over, then it starts burning fat, okay? You may have heard me talk about this before. You have a cap on how much glycogen your liver can store. And once you hit that cap, that fructose starts being converted to fat. So one of the biggest risk factors for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, I'm not talking about alcoholic fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is high fructose corn syrup intake. That about blew my mind. All those sodas and stuff those people are drinking, and these young healthy girls with fatty liver, otherwise healthy, they're a little bit overweight. They have fatty liver because I'd see them in clinic. I'm like, oh my God, it's the high fructose corn syrup. Their body can't process all this fructose, and the liver has no option other than to make it fat. So if that's not enough reason for you to give up the sodas, then woohoo! Okay. Cancer. So there's not a lot of great conclusive evidence about, sugar intake and cancer. But for women, there's a very clear correlation between added sugar intake and endometrial cancer, especially in midlife and into menopause. Remember that. One of the best sugar cancer connections we have is endometrial cancer. And for, other ones, it's still, they're so, cancer is multifactorial. There's so many things. We definitely know that, you have a better chance of survival with a healthy diet, whatever. But your risk of developing endometrial cancer is definitely higher with added sugar intakes. So they looked at specifically women who ate sweets. So that's like a cookie, a piece of candy, whatever, 3 times a week, were 1.5 times more likely to develop endometrial cancer than women who ate sweets every 2 weeks. So, how about that? 3 times a week. That doesn't seem like much. But are you willing to risk endometrial cancer for that? Is it worth it? I'm like, okay. And then we're going to the number 6, the weight and sugar addiction. Everybody wants to know about this. I'm addicted. Leptin, remember? And in the Galveston diet, we go deep dive into leptin, ghrelin, cortisol, insulin. It's all part of what the Galveston diet and all the education you get. But I'm going to touch on something here I think it's important for everyone to know. And please share this. Leptin is the satiety hormone in the body. It tells your body, I'm full, okay? And it diminishes hunger. Leptin is created in the gut mucosal cells in the small intestine. So when the food gets down there, those cells are like, we good, okay? Put out this hormone so we stop eating. It's also produced in fat cells because the fat cells are like, hey, we don't need any more fat. We're good. Stop eating. We're done. It's meant to be a regulatory, but there's something that develops in people, especially in obese people, called leptin resistance, where the leptin can't cross, we think, the blood-brain barrier. So you actually have enough leptin. You may even have 3 times as much leptin as someone who doesn't have leptin resistance. Okay, you have plenty of leptin. The cells are doing their job, okay? But the leptin, because probably chronic inflammation, leptin resistance, is not able to cross the blood-brain barrier. So the brain never gets the signal to stop eating, you're hungry. Have you ever eaten and you know you're full? You know you had plenty. And 2 hours later, you're like, I'm starving. How can I be starving? I feel bloated. I know there's stuff in my stomach. It is because your leptin is not able to cross the blood-brain barrier. So I go through this in a little more detail in the blog, and it's at www.galvestondiet.com. Go all the way to the down, click on blog. It's the first blog up right now. But so we know that leptin resistance is way more common in people who have high intake of high fructose corn syrup and high intake of other added sugars as well. Okay, so to summarize all this, do you have to break up with sugar? No, you don't. 25 grams of added sugar is reasonable. That's 6 teaspoons a day. That should be reasonable for you. Problem is, you're probably not adding that to your food. You may have added it to your coffee until you started following Dr. Haver and decided, once I go black, not going back in my coffee. But you may not realize how it is added in foods. It's added in marinara sauce. It is added in every baked good out there pretty much. It's added in one of my favorite things growing up, Jiffy cornbread. Anything from Jiffy. That was such a treat at my house. That's the only way I know how to make cornbread. I flipped that box over the other day and I about died. No wonder it's so good. The added sugars is like 25 grams of added sugar just in the cornbread. I was like, oh my God. So my challenge to you is no, we do not have a test yet for leptin resistance. We don't. It hasn't been developed. So remember that sugar is addicting, and the more you eat, the more addicted you're going to be. And simply the practice of tracking your added sugars, of saving those added sugars for that piece of cake, of shaving those added sugars for that beautifully baked good you made as a special treat for someone. Guys, you got to stop. The health reasons, you're going to feel so much better. And like I say, give nutrition a chance. You may be able to possibly, I cannot promise this, come off your medications or never ever have to start them. Always consider nutrition first. Have you maximized your nutrition before you run to take that pill? Because let me tell you, every single pill has a side effect. Okay, you may be getting more than you bargained for. And a medication is so necessary and so needed in so many people. And I'm not negating that. Okay, I'm a physician. I prescribe medication all the time. But I'm telling you, we are not giving our bodies its best chance. So one of the things that is so easy is to track your added sugars and to shoot for them to be less than 25 grams per day. If you want to learn more about the Galveston Diet, check us out at galvestondiet.com. We welcome you with open arms. We're almost 50,000 students strong. Our mission is to help women ease through the midlife transition without the excess belly fat, but we're also going to teach you why. We're going to teach you how, and our program has 5 weeks of meal plans just to get you started. All right, everybody, have a fabulous day, and I got to get back to work. So excited. Track those sugars, read those labels, look for the added sugar amount. Anything that's sugar, it'll say carbohydrates and it'll say sugars. Some of those might be naturally occurring, but look for the added sugars. Those are the bad actors, not the sugar that is naturally contained in the food. Okay, so yeah, why is it, I'm reading some of the questions. Why is it legal food industry to add high fructose corn syrup to our food? Ridiculous, it's allowed. Y'all, the food industry is a very powerful lobby. Do you know how much money Coca-Cola and Pepsi and those people have? Like, a lot. So, did you miss? No, number 6 was weight gain and sugar addiction. Sorry, I maybe just didn't say the number. All right, everybody. I do have to get back to work. Y'all have a fabulous day. Please share this. Please check us out at galvestondiet.com. Take our anti-inflammatory nutrition quiz. We'd love to have you. And take care.